So let's just get right into it. Boeing is seriously screwed. $6 billion in losses this quarter.
Yeah, and this is their worst quarter since 2020, like you said.
Yeah, and we've got a whole pile of articles and LinkedIn posts here, and everyone's basically saying this is it. This is a full-blown crisis for Boeing.
Yeah, and the timing couldn't be worse. We have 32,000 Boeing machinists voting on a strike as we speak.
Today, yeah.
So the entire company's basically at a standstill.
It's wild. It's like one of those things where it's like a slow-motion train wreck. You know, like you just can't look away.
Right.
But it's so frustrating because like everyone's saying this was totally preventable.
Yeah, I know.
Like Bill George, for example, is calling this the result of like long accumulated losses and just straight up management failures.
Right. Makes you wonder how they let it get this bad.
Yeah. So let's unpack that a little bit. What are the specific failures that people are pointing to here?
Yeah, so there are a few key themes that keep popping up in these posts. First, you've got this like broken culture thing. Like Rachel Rowe's post really emphasized that employees feel ignored by management and there's just like zero trust.
Yeah, of course that matters.
Right.
Like if you treat your employees like garbage, you're not going to get good work out of them.
Totally.
And when you're building airplanes, you kind of want your employees to be doing good work.
Oh. Yeah, it's a pretty crucial detail.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole innovation problem. People like Bill George are saying that Boeing has fallen behind its rivals, like Airbus.
Oof. Okay, so not only are they a mess internally, they're also getting their butts kicked by the competition.
That's right. Awesome.
And then there's the debt situation. Orlando James, he just comes right out and calls Boeing debt-ridden.
Wow.
And he says that raising more capital might not even be enough to fix things at this point.
Okay, so to recap, Boeing is bleeding money.
Yep.
The employees are miserable.
Pretty much.
And they're losing to the competition.
Is there anything at all that is not a complete disaster right now?
Well, they do have a new CEO.
Oh, right. Kelly Ortberg.
Yeah, he's supposed to be the guy who turns things around. Okay,
so give it to me straight. Is this guy the hero that Boeing needs? Or is he just like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic?
I mean, it's tough to say right now, but it seems like his plan is basically to make Boeing leaner.
Leaner?
Yeah. You know?
That's code for layoffs, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Bill George mentions 17,000 employees have already been laid off.
Oh, God.
And it sounds like more cuts are coming, but Ortberg's also pushing this back to basics message.
Okay.
And talking about rebuilding trust.
So he's firing people and trying to boost morale at the same time.
Yeah.
That's an interesting strategy.
Yeah, Peter Atwater actually compared him to like an ER doctor, you know, dealing with a very sick patient.
Yeah, but even the best ER doc can't save a patient who just refuses to take their medicine, you know?
Right.
Like, what if the problems at Boeing go deeper than just bad management?
Well, and there's this detail in Josh Witt's post that I found really troubling.
Okay, hit me with it. What fresh hell have we uncovered now?
So apparently, Ortberg just approved this acquisition of Spirit Aerosystems.
Okay.
Which adds, get this, $8.3 billion to their debt.
Wait, they're buying another company?
Yeah.
While they're laying off their own people and drowning in debt?
Yep.
That's not back to basics. That's financial suicide.
It's definitely risky. Some analysts are really skeptical, but Ortberg seems to believe this acquisition is like key to their future.
So first it's layoffs and back to basics, and now it's this massive spending spree while they're already bleeding money.
Right.
It's like they're trying to set a new record for corporate self-sabotage or something.
It's a gamble for sure, and it just shows how pivotal this moment is for Boeing. Like, whether this guy succeeds or fails, it's going to have a ripple effect across the entire aerospace industry.
So bottom line for our listeners, should they be selling their Boeing stock? Should they be building a bunker in their backyard?
I mean, I can't give financial advice, obviously.
Sure.
But this is definitely a time to be cautious.
Okay.
Like, the situation is really unpredictable right now.
So probably not the best time to go all in on Boeing stock then.
Probably not. But on the other hand, if Ortberg's plan actually works and they turn things around, then the stock could rebound like crazy.
You have a classic high-risk, high-reward situation.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating.
Yeah.
Boeing's future is hanging in the balance, and the outcome is going to affect a lot of people. This is a story about corporate greed, the decline of American manufacturing, and the fight to stay competitive in a global economy.
And it's a story that's still being written.
Absolutely. We're all watching to see how it unfolds.
Yeah.
Now, if we think about the impact on American manufacturing as a whole...
Well, no, let's unpack that in part 3. This is getting intense.
All right, so let's zoom out for a minute and think about the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
Boeing's crisis isn't just about one company.
Right.
It's really a reflection of some deeper problems with American manufacturing in general.
Okay. Well, let's connect the dots for me. How does Boeing's meltdown relate to the state of American manufacturing as a whole?
Well, for decades, Boeing was like the symbol of American industrial dominance, you know?
Yeah.
They built these amazing, innovative products that everyone wanted.
Mm.
But somewhere along the line, things changed.
Well, there was that whole 737 MAX disaster.
Right.
Those two crashes were like devastating for their reputation.
Yeah, that was definitely a turning point, but it goes beyond that. American companies are facing more and more competition from overseas, especially from China.
And how does that pressure affect a company like Boeing?
Well, it forces them to cut costs, become more efficient, but sometimes that can backfire.
Like cutting corners, sacrificing quality.
Exactly, and that's where the whole corporate culture issue comes in.
Yeah.
When companies prioritize profits over people, you create an environment where safety and innovation suffer.
Which leads to things like the 737 MAX crashes.
Right.
Which then further erode trust and damage the company's reputation. It's a vicious cycle.
Exactly. And it's not just happening at Boeing. We're seeing similar trends in other industries as well.
So what's the solution?
Yeah.
How do we break free from this downward spiral?
Well, there's no quick fix.
Right.
It requires a fundamental shift in thinking.
Okay.
Companies need to start valuing long-term sustainability over short-term gains. You know, they need to invest in their workforce, foster a culture of innovation, and prioritize safety above all else.
That sounds great in theory, but how do we actually make that happen?
It takes strong leadership.
Okay.
Leaders who are willing to make tough choices even if they're unpopular. Leaders who prioritize their employees and the long-term health of their company.
So basically, we need more leaders like Kelly Ortberg, the guy who's buying another company while laying off thousands of employees.
Well, Ortberg's strategy is certainly unconventional.
Yeah.
Maybe he sees this acquisition as like a necessary gamble, a way to give Boeing the tools it needs to compete in the future.
It's a huge gamble.
Yeah.
And speaking of gambles, what about our listener who might have some Boeing stock?
Right.
Any advice for them?
Well, I'm not a financial advisor.
Of course.
So I can't give any specific investment guidance, but I would say this is a time to be very cautious.
Okay.
The situation at Boeing is incredibly volatile. It wouldn't be surprising to see the stock price drop even further in the short term.
So maybe not the best time to go all in on Boeing.
Probably not. But on the other hand, if Ortberg's plan works and Boeing manages to turn things around, the stock could rebound significantly.
High risk, high reward.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole deep dive so compelling. For Boeing's future is totally up in the air, and the outcome is going to affect a lot of people. This is a story about corporate greed, the decline of American manufacturing, the fight to stay competitive in a global economy. It's a pretty big deal.
And it's a story that's still being written.
Absolutely. We're all watching to see how this unfolds.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. I think we all need a minute to process all this before we jump into the next layer of this mess.
Agreed.
We'll be back in a moment with part 3 of our deep dive into the Boeing crisis. Stay with us. All right, we're back, and I got to say, this whole Boeing thing has really got me thinking.
Yeah.
Like, this was the American company, you know, the gold standard for innovation and engineering.
Right.
And now they're barely keeping the lights on. It's kind of scary.
It is. It shows that no company is too big to fail.
And it makes you wonder, what does this mean for the future of American manufacturing in general? Can we even compete on a global level anymore?
That's the big question, isn't it? There's no easy answer, but I do think that Boeing's crisis is a wake-up call for all of us.
Okay.
It's a sign that we need to adapt, innovate, invest in our workforce, really focus on quality and safety.
Because if we don't, we risk losing our edge, falling behind the competition, and basically becoming irrelevant.
Exactly. The world is changing fast. We can't just sit back and relax anymore. We need to be proactive. Think ahead. Be open to new technologies and ideas.
So what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from this deep dive? What's the most important lesson we can learn from Boeing's struggles?
I think the biggest takeaway is that complacency can be fatal.
Okay.
Whether it's a company, an industry, or even a country, if we stop innovating, if we stop pushing ourselves to be better, we're going to fall behind.
That's a pretty sobering thought. But hopefully it's also a motivator. It means we still have a chance to change course. You know, we can learn from Boeing's mistakes and build a better path forward.
Absolutely. The real opportunity lies in embracing change, encouraging innovation, and working towards a more sustainable future.
Well said.
Hmm.
All right, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the Boeing crisis. It's been a wild ride.
It has.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder. We've spent a lot of time talking about Boeing's problems. But what about potential solutions? What are some of the innovative ideas out there that could help not just Boeing, but the entire aerospace industry get back on track? That's something to think about. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.